They came to conquer. They came to win. But Stalingrad had another plan. Crow meat, boiled leather, starving men chasing horses through frozen ruins. The German 6th Army marched into Stalingrad proud and unstoppable. But the city became a cage. The enemy outside was deadly, but the enemy inside, gnawing at their stomachs, was deadlier. Every day was a fight, not for land, not for victory, but simply to stay alive. This is the story of Stalingrad's darkest hunger, where survival meant losing more than land. It meant losing yourself. In the summer of 1942, Germany aimed to capture Stalingrad to cut Soviet supply lines and protect their push for Caucasus oil. For the job, they chose the 6th Army, one of Wehrmacht's largest and most battle-tested forces. Led by General Friedrich Paulus and over 250,000 strong, it was considered the perfect force to take the city. Their supply line stretched far behind them, bringing with it everything they needed to maintain strength: food, ammunition, fuel. At the start, their meals were a reflection of this well-planned military campaign. Each soldier carried rations packed in meticulous detail: dense rye bread, cans of processed meat, sausages, and packets of schmaltz. The Gulaschkanonen, or goulash cannon, rolled through the ranks, offering hot meals like pea soup, goulash, and hearty stews. It wasn't just about feeding the soldiers. It was about giving them a little comfort, a small taste of home, right there in the middle of enemy territory. But as the days turned into weeks, the relentless Russian winter began to set in, and by November 1942, the perfect machine started to fail. Soviet forces struck back with Operation Uranus, and within 4 days, between 13 and 19 November 1942, around 250,000 German soldiers were trapped and encircled by the Red Army. Cut off from the outside world, the lifelines vanished. Rail lines fell silent. Supply trucks stopped. Trapped inside the pocket, Commander Friedrich Paulus pleaded with Berlin for permission to break out. But far away, Hitler had already made up his mind. There would be no retreat, no surrender. Stalingrad, he declared, would stand as a fortress, and to keep it alive, he promised the impossible: air supplies. That promise came from Hermann Göring, who claimed he could build an air bridge. But the reality was grim. The 6th Army needed a minimum of 500 tons of supplies daily. On a good day, the Luftwaffe could manage 100. Some days, nothing. 3 enemies crushed the airlift before it could ever succeed. The brutal Russian winter that kept planes frozen to the ground, the Red Air Force waiting to shoot down those that did take off, and the simple, inescapable truth: the Luftwaffe just didn't have enough to give. For the soldiers, the sky became both their last hope and their greatest disappointment. In late November, one wrote, "We trust in the Führer's promise. We look to the sky for the planes that'll save us." Weeks later, only a handful of planes made it through today. Our bread ration was cut again. By January, hope faded. The sky is empty. They have lied to us. They have forgotten us here to die. Movement became impossible. Temperatures plummeted to -30 degrees Celsius. Steel turned brittle. Boots froze solid, and men struggled just to move their limbs. Frostbite claimed fingers and toes. Hypothermia crept into their bones. Some couldn't hold their positions, not from fear, but because their bodies had surrendered to the merciless cold. By mid-January, deliveries had fallen further. After Potomac fell on the 16th and 17th of January and Gumrak on the 23rd of January, landings ceased and only scattered airdrops remained. The situation spiraled. What had begun as a swift, decisive campaign had become a deadly trap. And in the freezing ruins of Stalingrad, the soldiers turned to a single, desperate mission: finding food. Horses that once pulled artillery and carried supplies quickly became a primary source of meat, supplemented by whatever rations and scraps were found. As food ran out completely, the soldiers were forced to go further. They hunted stray dogs, cats and rats, anything to quiet the hunger. They even caught birds like magpies and crows. The meat was tough and unappetizing, but by then, it was necessary for survival. When all the animals were gone, the soldiers turned to anything they could find. They boiled leather belts, boots, and harness straps, hoping to make some kind of broth. They searched through the frozen trash for any scraps that might have once been food. Even the bodies of the dead, friend or enemy, were searched for anything edible. Nothing was too degrading. One of the most terrifying meals was what they called water soup. With no real food left, they boiled bones, scraps of meat, and some oat flour to make a watery broth. The thin, tasteless liquid gave only a moment's relief, but it was all they had. Day after day, it became part of the ritual. Sip, swallow, endure. One horror was rarely named. Not in letters home, not in whispers, not even in diaries. It survives only at the margins of the record. Unfinished sentences and averted eyes. A handful of wartime reports and later testimonies allege isolated cannibalism, but clear, verifiable evidence from inside the Stalingrad pocket is scarce, and historians disagree. What is securely documented is grim enough. Horse meat, small animals like cats and birds, boiled leather and thin bone, or flour-based broths that barely kept men on their feet. Beyond that, the evidence runs out. By the end, the Kessel was no longer an army. It was a collection of hollowed-out figures, stripped of rank and order, united only by one thing: an unblinking will to survive at any cost. When the German 6th Army finally surrendered on February 2, 1943, only about 91,000 soldiers were left and taken prisoner by the Soviets. By the time they gave up, these soldiers had already suffered months of hunger, cold, and deadly diseases. Their nightmare, however, was far from over. Right after they surrendered, they were forced to march across the frozen Russian landscape, heading to prison camps. It was a brutal journey. Many were too weak to keep going, and they were either shot by guards or left to die in the snow. The ones who survived the death marches ended up in Soviet prison and labor camps, some as far away as Serbia, deep in the Arctic Circle. Conditions in these camps were horrific. They barely had enough food, and diseases like typhus spread quickly. There was no proper medical care, and the forced labor was grueling, especially in the cold. Many men didn't survive the first few months. Out of the 91,000 soldiers who were captured at Stalingrad, only about 5,000 to 6,000 made it through the years of captivity and eventually returned home. The last survivors weren't released until 1955, a full decade after the war ended. They couldn't escape the images of their comrades' last moments, or the horrible food that had kept them alive. Even after returning home, they were never truly free. If this haunting glimpse pulled you in, subscribe for more history told vividly and brutally. Then, join the conversation. How much do you think starvation sealed the fate of this frozen battlefield? Share your thoughts in the comments below. History never sleeps. Stay curious until next time.